Welcome to Study Session 5, Professional Training in Clinical Psychology. Introduction. The issue of professional training in clinical psychology has generated a lot of debate, heated arguments, controversy, and professional rivalries among various persons in this country, the United Kingdom, as well as the United States of America. However, you will be acquainted with only the training as it is in the USA and currently in Nigeria. In this study, you will also learn about clinical psychology licensure, learning outcomes. At the end of this study, you should be able to 1. Discuss clinical psychology training in the United States of America. 2. Discuss clinical psychology training in Nigeria. 3. Explain clinical psychology licensure training in the United States. The question of the importance of meaningful norms for clinical training for clinical and other psychologists has preoccupied the attention of clinical psychologists elsewhere. This has led to several conferences, and such conferences include the Boulder, Northwestern, Thayer, Stanford, and Eston Park conferences, all in the USA. 3 models guide the training of clinical psychologists. They are the scientist practitioner model, the clinical scientist model, the practitioner scholar model. The scientist practitioner model was an important offshoot of the National Institute of Mental Health NIMH sponsored conference in Boulder, Colorado, 1949, to develop consensual standards for education and training in clinical psychology. Most doctoral programs awarding PhD in the field maintain the scientist practitioner model, demanding academic requirements in general areas of psychology such as cognitive, developmental, physiological, and social psychology, as well as psychopathology and methods of assessment and intervention, including supervised practical experience and 1-year pre-doctoral internship. This was to ensure that clinical psychologists will be continually reminded of the complexity of human needs and problems and the need for continued training in assessment and treatment. In scientist practitioner model, graduate students must develop and demonstrate competencies in research and psychological service provision. The guiding philosophy underlying the scientist practitioner model is that clinical psychologists should be capable of producing research and utilizing empirical evidence to guide their clinical services. Most programs require a research project at the master's level and an original research dissertation for the doctoral degree. The clinical scientist model strongly promotes the development of research skills with the primary goal of equipping graduates to contribute to the knowledge base of psychology and related disciplines. In the 1950s and 1960s, most graduates from Boulder model programs were employed in practice settings with primary responsibility for clinical service. These psychologists very rarely conducted any research after completing the doctoral dissertation. At a training conference in Vail, Colorado, participants expressed their dissatisfaction with the manner in which the scientist practitioner model was applied in many training programs and developed a new model, the practitioner scholar model, which was refined at subsequent conferences. The practitioner scholar model was designed to emphasize training in the clinical skills that most clinical psychologists would need in a service setting, and to place less emphasis on research skills taught in PhD programs. Programs training students in the practitioner scholar model offered a different degree, the PsyD. Many PsyD programs have developed research requirements that include considerable research training and a completion of a research project. Compared with PhD programs, PsyD programs place less emphasis on experimental designs and large sample analysis and greater emphasis on naturalistic designs and the evaluation of individual cases or service-oriented programs. PsyD programs are designed to train research consumers who are informed by science in their service activities but who do not need the skills to conduct research. PhD programs in professional psychology are offered in universities. PsyD programs are found both at universities and in freestanding professional schools. Many in the profession have expressed concerns about the proliferation of the freestanding schools. Critics note factors that negatively affect the quality of students' training, including larger class sizes, lower financial support, and an over-reliance on part-time instructors with little experience in research or teaching. The main distinction between PhD and PsyD models of training is the weight given to science and practice. The American Psychological Association was the first to develop an accreditation process designed to ensure that training programs maintain standards that meet the profession's expectations for the education of clinical psychologists. The APA Committee on Accreditation evaluates the quality of clinical psychology training in both clinical training models. A program that receives accreditation from APA has met, therefore, the high standards of training set by the profession, and graduates from the program are likely to receive some of the best training available in clinical psychology. Students are strongly advised, therefore, to seek training in an accredited clinical psychology program. Clinical training in Nigeria. There is an urgent need to create broad-based goals for clinical psychology training in Nigeria. Therefore, an effort should be geared towards the development, demonstration, and popularization of our expertise in other areas of medicine, such as pediatrics, neurology, ophthalmology, cardiology, public health, nursing, therapeutics, e.g. cancer treatment, and to involve our trainees in the whole spectrum of health-related problems in which a clinical psychologist has clearly substantial competence. In pursuance of the goal of evolving a broad-based orientation in clinical psychology, training programs should maintain not only relations with university-based and medicine-based units, but also, more importantly, with community-based organizations, including even such privately organized groups like the Cancer Foundation, Leprosy Foundation, and so on. Uzoka further observed that the various areas of human and social welfare where the skills of a clinical psychologist can make positive contributions should be included in our training. The emphasis in our training programs seems to be too heavily on mental illness. This is certainly part and should remain part of clinical psychology. Uzoka in his paper gave the following suggestions. A. That all candidates for admission to clinical psychology be holders of good first degrees in psychology. B. That until we develop good screening devices, only candidates with first class and second class upper divisions degrees be admitted to the MSc PhD degree program. C. That other qualified candidates be admitted to the master's level degree and pursue programs that have been clearly specified. Licensure in clinical psychology. Healthcare professionals are usually licensed by a licensing body to provide their services as they deal with issues related to human life. Like medical doctors and other health practitioners, clinical psychologists must meet minimum requirements for their academic and clinical training and are required by law to provide ethical and competent services. They are also regulated by a professional organization, for example, state licensing boards, that hold them accountable for their professional activities. State licensing boards help citizens to identify qualified practitioners and have the power to suspend or remove the license of a person whose professional practice has been incompetent or unethical. Without some form of licensing, there is no regulatory body to ensure that the public is protected when receiving healthcare services. To be licensed as a psychologist, the person must meet requirements including education, examination, and supervised experience. Licensure requirements in clinical psychology vary from country to country. In the United States, doctoral training is required to become a clinical psychologist. In most European countries, a master's degree is required, whereas in other countries such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain, doctoral level training is preferred, although it may be possible for someone with master's level training to become licensed as a clinical psychologist. In some countries such as New Zealand, registration is compulsory for psychologists working in the public sector, but is optional, although strongly recommended for psychologists in private practice. In Nigeria, there is yet to be a licensing body to grant licenses to professional practice to clinical psychologists. It is, however, hoped that in the nearest future, a licensing and regulatory body will be available. Summary for study session. In study session 5, you have learned that 1. There are 3 models guiding the training of clinical psychologists. 2. The clinical scientist model strongly promotes the development of research skills. 3. The practitioner scholar model was designed to emphasize training in the clinical skills that most clinical psychologists would need in a service setting, and to place less emphasis on richer skills taught in PhD programs. 4. Healthcare professionals are usually licensed by a licensing body to provide their services as they deal with issues related to human life. 5. In some countries such as New Zealand, registration is compulsory for psychologists working in the public sector, but is optional for psychologists in private practice. This is the end of study session 5. Thanks for listening.